the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6. Adequate notice of the meeting has been provided by submission of the notice of the time, date, and location to the Star Ledger on December 7, 2022, and the Hunterdon County Democrat on December 8, 2022. Notice and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting has been posted at North Hunterdon High School and Voorhees High School, provided to the municipal clerks of Bethlehem Township, California Borough, Town of Clinton, Clinton Township, Franklin Township, Glen Gardner Borough, Hampton Borough, Highbridge Borough, Lebanon Borough, Lebanon Township, Tewksbury Township, and Union Township, as well as other interested parties, and posted on the district website. Fire exits are located in this direction, and there is one as well this way. If alerted to a fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest smoke-free exit. At this time, please silence all cell phones. I'd like to ask everyone to rise to salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The official election results have been distributed to each board member. So congratulations to our incumbents, Kimberly Solino and Jessica Viato, as well as a congratulations to our new member, Beth Cotrin and Nicole Gallo. Welcome. At this time, I'd like to ask the four of you to kindly stand. You have in front of you an oath of office. If you could insert your name where it says, and at the same time read the oath of office.
I'm sorry, is there any Bibles available? I'm sorry, do you guys have them available? Never mind.
Please begin.
I, Beth Cotrin, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I solemnly swear that I
possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask for a roll call at this time.
Ms. Bonomi? Present. Mr. Chapman?
Present.
Ms. Crisologo?
Present.
Mr. Farbanish?
Here.
Ms. Gallo?
Here.
Ms. Hintz?
Present.
Mr. Kirschberger?
Here.
Ms. Cotran?
Present?
Mr. Mueller?
Here.
Ms. Salino?
Here.
Mr. Spanton?
Here.
And Ms. Viato?
Here.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for the report of the nominating committee chairperson, Ms. Crisologo.
That's okay, thank you. The nomination committee consists of myself, Glenn Farbanish, and Daniel Spanton. We met on December 29th at 6 p.m. virtually. We discussed the nominations and supporting comments for each of the nominees and share positive insights to each. The person recommended for president is experienced, a great leader, a good facilitator, inclusive, approachable, articulate, open-minded, and values others' opinions, and speaks up when necessary, but always in a constructive and complimentary manner. With that said, the nomination committee nominates Robert Kirchberger to the seat of president of the North Hunterdon Regional High School District for 2023.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations at this time from the floor for the office of president? Having heard none, I declare the nominations closed at this time. Any board member may place a member's name in nomination. A second is not required as an official note of business. Elections for each office will be conducted by roll call vote when the nominations for that office are closed. The candidate receiving the votes of the majority of board members present and voting will be elected to office. In the event no candidate receives a majority of the votes cast, a second election shall be conducted between the two candidates receiving the highest number of votes. At this time, I'd like to call for a roll call.
Ms. Bonomi?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
This is for
Right.
Mr.
Because there's only one nominee, you don't have to say the name.
The
Rules that I read.
The motion on the floor, so we're clear, is for Mr. Kirchberger to be named President of Board of Education. Why don't we begin the roll call again?
My apologies, please, beginning it.
Ms. Bonomi?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Ms. Crisologo?
Yes.
Mr. Farbanish?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Ms. Hintz?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchberger?
Yes.
Ms. Cotran?
Yes.
Mr. Mulek?
Yes.
Ms. Salino?
Yes.
Mr. Spanton?
Yes.
And Ms. Beato?
Yes. Congratulations, Mr. Kirchberg. You could join us at the front. And at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Kirchberger to move forward with the election for office of Vice President.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the vote of confidence and the kind words from the nomination committee. So thank you. Looking forward to a great year and finding my place in the agenda. All right, moving ahead, the election for office of Vice President. Ms. Crisologo, can we have a report from the
Yes, we
nominating
do.
committee?
So the results of the nominations we received for vice president were a 3-3-3-1 nomination. Therefore, it's a stalemate and we could not reach a consensus. So the nomination committee represents the VP nomination come to the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us what the 3-3-3-1 were?
The individuals?
Yeah.
So there were 3 for yourself, 3 for Deborah, and 3 for Kim, and 1 for Daniel.
Thank you. Okay, so based on that feedback from the nominating committee, are there any nominations from the floor for the office of Vice President?
I'd like to make a motion for Kimberly Salino for Vice President.
I'd like to make a motion for Deb Bonomi for Vice President.
Okay, any other nominations from the floor? John, you want to guide us through how we're going to make this vote?
It'll be my pleasure, Mr. President. The policy indicates that there will be a roll call vote in the order that nominations are received. So Ms. Salino will be up first. And if a majority, based on our very simple and easy to add weighted voting mechanism, is voted in the first round, the voting closes and she would be vice president. If that's not the case, then we would proceed to Ms. Bonomi. And if we have a majority there, we stop. If not, then this would continue until we have a vice president. We clear?
Thank you.
Okay. So if I may, Mr. President, we have a motion on the floor for Ms. Kimberly Salino as Vice President, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Bonomi?
No.
Mr. Chapman?
No.
Ms. Crisologo?
Yes.
Mr. Farbanish?
No.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Ms. Hintz?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchberger?
No.
Ms. Cotran?
No.
Mr. Mulek?
No.
Ms. Salino?
Yes.
Mr. Spanton?
No.
Ms. Beato?
No.
Okay, so that does not fail. And so the members of the public understand, not, everyone has one vote, but we have a weighted vote system here under the rules, which goes to municipalities, so different votes carry different weights, which is why we at times, and the business officials here have a big job at every meeting. So we will proceed then to the second nomination. And that nomination is for Ms. Benami as Vice President, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Bonomi,
Yes.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Ms. Crisalogo,
No.
Mr. Farbanish,
Yes.
Ms. Gallo,
No.
Ms. Hintz,
No.
Mr. Kirschberger,
Yes.
Ms. Cotran,
Yes.
Mr. Mealy,
Yes.
Ms. Salino,
No.
Mr. Spanton,
Yes.
Ms. Beato.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries, congratulations.
All right, congratulations. Next order of business is, I need a motion and a second for action items 8.1 through 8.12. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Dan and Deb. Any discussion on 8.1 through 8.12? Seeing none, we need a roll call vote.
Ms. Bonomi,
Yes.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Ms. Crisalogo,
Yes.
Mr. Farbanish,
Yes.
Ms. Gallo,
Abstain.
Ms. Hintz,
Yes.
Mr. Kirschberger,
Yes.
Ms. Cotran,
Yes.
Mr. Mealy,
Yes.
Ms. Salino,
Yes.
Mr. Spanton,
Yes.
and Ms. Beato.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next order of business is a presentation from Mr. Comegno on the School Ethics Act and the Code of Ethics for School Board Members. Yes, and a reminder, in front of you each is a statement of acknowledgement of the Code of Ethics. So could you just sign them and leave them in front of your chair? Be collected at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. I want to welcome the new members to the Board of Education. This is an august and incredibly important position, and I will say to you two, as to the rest, this is the most single, selfless public service you can engage in. There is no other body in this state that is subject to the scrutiny of boards of education. There is no other body in this state that receives zero compensation, as you all do. President and Vice President get double zero compensation. In an era of COVID, over the last 2+ years, we have walked through the desert, regardless of whether you entered that desert from the left or the right or the center, or dropped in from up top. No answer is the right answer. And yet, the business of schools continue. And the difficult decisions that you all are charged to make, as you are privileged to do so by constituents, and many who are here, are on public display. I applaud all of you for the incredible work that you do. And I congratulate our new members and our returning members who just haven't got enough. And what in the world relation does the brain that wouldn't die have to do with New Jersey public school ethics? Right? If you were my law students and I turned in their grades, not late. Would have been late if it was 11, it was 10 a.m. this morning. If you could answer the question, you would have gotten extra credit. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act is actually known as the Senator Byron Baer Open Public Meetings Act, and other than the Open Public Meetings Act, Senator Baer's claim to fame is he was the technical director on the brain that wouldn't die. And we might have talked already tonight more about the brain that wouldn't die. It has been talked about in the last 30 years. This body operates under the Open Public Meetings Act, OPMA, which is why our constituents have an opportunity to be heard. They're going to have an opportunity to be heard in a little bit. Why we have roll call votes for certain things. Why we start every meeting with a pledge. Why we have to put in a public notice for our meetings, all those kinds of things. We also operate under the School Ethics Act, or the SEA, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight. I know we have a short agenda, so I'm not going to take more than 2 or 3 hours to go through the tenets of the School Ethics Act. I want to ask you folks, what's the job? And it's not rhetorical, which is a weirdly spelled word. What's the job of a member of the school board? What's your job? What do you think?
To make policy and make sure policy's in place so that the administration has the tools they need to run the district.
What a great answer. Thank you. To make policy, to ensure that policy is in place so that the administration has the tools necessary to administer the district. I love that answer. What else, folks?
To represent the students.
Thank you. To represent the students. I love that too. Because you're here to advocate. You're here to advocate and often think about the impact on the seat of the student, your decisions. Impact. What else?
Not just the students, to represent our constituents,
Yes.
as well as staff, employees, it trickles down.
Love it. To represent constituents, to be the voice of constituents. The Act talks about that. To interpret the will of the community, the Act speaks to.
Fiscal responsibility.
Fiscal responsibility, important at a time when we do more with less, when we have to do more with less, when we're expected to do more with less. Great answers. What's the purpose of a school board meeting? And I would suggest, folks, that everything within the Act, and it's lengthy, and lots of decisions, and the School Ethics Commission meets every month and provides advisory opinions, it hears allegations of violations of the Act. All of it's tied up in these 2 questions. What's my job as a board member? And what do we do in meetings? All of it's tied up. What's the purpose of a meeting?
To inform the public.
Thank you. To inform the public. What else? To vote. To take action. I would suggest to you folks that hits the nail on the head. The meeting of a Board of Education is not a meeting for the public. It is a meeting of the Board of Education in public. It is a meeting of the Board of Education in which the public can attend and see the business, can be heard, is provided an opportunity to comment. But when you have a question, and our new members in particular, when you have a question about, what can I bring up? What are we going to talk about? Committee reports, whether it's an action item or not. What we do here is to take actions with regard to the administering of the school district. And your principal job is not, as you're going to see, to administer the schools, as was articulated better than my words, to provide the tools for the district to be administered. Not to administer the district, but to see that the district is well administered. And that's throughout the Act. This body is the governing body of the district. It is the executive. But it doesn't have a position where it investigates. It doesn't have a position where it directs the administration, except in certain very narrow ways, like we talk about with policy and developing policy. Charged with high-level policy-making decisions. This can be so frustrating. Because you run for this thankless elected office, but you're not picking a speaker. They're not picking a speaker, by the way. You're not developing individually a vision. You're working in concert with your peers. And this is one of the largest boards in the state. And as we've already discussed,
They're weighted votes. Even the votes themselves are unique. That looks very important. Only the entity can enter into contracts. Only the board, the legal body itself, not individuals. Decision-making authority is limited, may not administer. We're going to climb inside that a little bit further. In many situations, you can't act without recommendation of the superintendent. Hiring, firing determinations, personnel determinations require under law recommendation of the superintendent, which is why you'll hear resolutions upon the recommendation of. Similarly, financial decisions come with recommendations from the business office. And that's because the state recognizes that they're licensed, certificated folks that have certain specialized training in considering what the impact is on students, in considering what the impact is on the educational institution. I want you also to think about today in a time, and this is also unfair, and I have the privilege of providing a lot of PD to a lot of folks in a lot of places. And I often ask teachers, can you ever take your hat off? Can you ever take your hat off? If you're not here at a board meeting with a smart member of the media seated right in the front row, or members of the community here with their phones out watching you and listening, and you're at the grocery store, on the soccer field, wherever it might be, can you speak freely? Can you say, hey, this is my individual comment? Can you go on social media? The best advice I can give you is delete your social media, by the way. Can you go on social media and say whatever you want and say, it's just me. It's just John. Can you or can you not? Something to think about. I would suggest to you, you can't. The School Ethics Commission has told us that as well. Because it's not so much what you are saying, it's how those words are interpreted and perceived, because perception is reality. Because you're a member of the Board of Education. And you need to think about that. Which is also part of the rub. Because you run to give your time selflessly to advocate for this or advocate for that, only to find that, hey, that advocacy has to be at the committee level. That advocacy has to be behind the scenes. That advocacy has to be when we're taking action. So let's talk about some of the specific tenets. No micromanaging, and this gets to this issue of administer versus seeing that the district's well administered. I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow members to see that they're well run. In a couple of cases. And these citations go to the year. This is a 2006 case, a 2010 case. These are cases that the School Ethics Commission, which is an agency operated by our State Department of Education to hear ethics issues, has determined. Board member violated the code when he unilaterally visited the school and took pictures of open windows in the middle school and items in the board office bathroom, which he then shared with reporters. Carrying out an investigation individually can't do. Board member would violate the act by participating in an exit interview or merely observing an exit interview. Again, getting to what your authority is. Can I do this? Well, think to yourselves, folks, always roll the tape forward. Why would I? Why am I meeting with an employee? Do I have authority to investigate? If a concern is ever brought to your attention, best course of action always, and we just saw it, democracy in action. You elected officers. You elected leaders of the board. Best course of action always is to direct it to leadership and then let leadership investigate, share it with leadership of the district. It's only after an administrative process fails that you then safely, ethically, can bring it up again. And these cases say that time and again. Limited to policy making, as was shared, I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal. I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. That's big picture, that's 30,000 foot. Figuring out what a policy is and is not, at times can be difficult. That's why you have professionals to assist. You ask those questions. You share those questions. If you have questions, direct them to leadership and you'll get answers. Some cases. Asbury Park. Board members conducted a site visit to assess a candidate for assistant superintendent without board authority. You can't do that. It's a hire that the board might be making, but you can't interview on your own. Morris Hill's case. This is one of our cases. Volunteering, your role in what you can and can't do. We had here a former teacher who retired when he was a teacher. He was an assistant director of the school musical, which is the most important extracurricular activity, by the way. Some of you know my passion. His wife was the director. He retired, got himself elected to the board. Can he continue as assistant director? Think about that. He's now part of the chief executive. He's part of the executive. He's part of the body that oversees the superintendent, evaluates the superintendent, who evaluates the building principal in which that building, where the musical is hosted, who has ultimate authority over the teacher, his wife, who's the director. It's sticky and awkward, isn't it? If it feels sticky and awkward, often it is. Can't do that. So you need to think about that, folks, in your volunteering activities. Your volunteering activities, because you've got executive role here, have to be limited, very, very attenuated. Can you collect tickets at a door for an event, not supervise anybody here and there? Sure. With notice. Can you be in an official capacity, in a stipended position? Can you be in a position of authority in a PTA, a PTO, another booster club, where there's direct supervision? Likely not. What information may a school board member access? Again, I would come back to those first questions. You have a right to information to objectively cast a vote at this table, and not a stitch more. What information do you need to vote yes or no? That's the information that you have access to. Something to think about. Personnel committees. SEC does not encourage personnel committees, interestingly. This is why we as a body go into exec and hear a report about what the personnel items are on an agenda. And again, this gets to what the role is. Why would you have a personnel committee when boards are subject to the recommendations of the superintendent? What's a board of the whole compared to a board by committee? And how are they different? What are your thoughts, folks?
Board by committee, you divide up the areas of responsibility. You meet, and then you present to the board, the entire board, your recommendations. And then board as a whole, you just do it all together.
Thank you. Divided responsibility, I like that concept. Boards that operate by committee, and this is one of them, are placing trust in your peers to hear certain information that you want to hear. Because if you're on finance and operations, if you're on curriculum, if you're on whatever the committee might be, you're going to hear this much information to make recommendations that are going to be like this that come before the whole body. And that recommendation then gets voted on. You hear reports, you hear suggestions from the committee chairs. That's different than a board of the whole, and some boards determine they can't operate this way. And they have work sessions in public. Public can come. Public's not invited to committee meetings. We operate here by committee. And that means that all determinations get sent out by subject and topic area, get determined, reviewed, analyzed, a lot of work, and then recommendations are brought back. Let's remember there's a difference. So I say that you operate based on a recommendation, personnel from the superintendent. Does that mean that you're rubber stamping personnel and other recommendations?
No.
Do you have to vote yes?
No.
The answer is no, you don't have to vote yes. You don't have to vote yes. But you have to have a good faith, reasonable, informed, factual difference of opinion to vote no. It can't be arbitrary. It can't be disagreeable. It can't be because I didn't, or I don't like, or I didn't get, which are some things that we see in various decisions. I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the superintendent's recommendation. A couple of cases. Central Regional case. Board members didn't violate the code when they voted not to reappoint an employee to a former position despite the contrary recommendation. And that's because there were bona fide reasons to vote no. We felt that another candidate had these qualifications. We felt that prior performance should have weighed more heavily. Examples. I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties. This is important. I'm an elected official. I am a voice for my constituents. I'm here to be mindful of costs, curriculum, other things. I've got a concern about what's happening in this department. I've got a concern about what's happening in this activity. I've got a concern, right? So we get to new business, and your hand goes up and you say, you know what? What's going on in that math department? Do we know? Do you know what's going on? I heard that so-and-so is doing such and such, X, Y, Z. We can't do that. Because that, on its face, violates this tenet. Does that mean that it's rank and file? You can't raise concerns? Absolutely not. But those concerns are directed to leadership, and an appropriate administrative process follows. And again, we only get to that point of, I'm going to raise my hand and raise a concern until and unless that process fails. Board member violated the code when he sent a letter to the superintendent copying the president of the State Board of Ed and the ECS, accusing the superintendent of allowing his employees to violate board policy. No administrative process. The letter itself might have actually been defamatory. Board member violated the code when he sent an email to the superintendent, also sent to the BA and other board members, the BA meaning business administrator, that was threatening and intimidating, and that it asked for the superintendent to provide an accounting of personal leave. If there's a concern directed to leadership to investigate, we see this time and again. Is the role of the board president, other than the double salary of nothing, which even this lawyer knows that means nothing, lawyer math, different than that of other members? This august position. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Leadership develops the agenda. Leadership supports principally administration. Leadership does all of these things, and this is right in our policy. Presides, these specific legal tasks. Also this, responsible for the orderly conduct of all board meetings, which we've seen. At times when there are heartfelt issues, whatever the issue might be, it's board president that has got to carry that gavel, which can feel like 500 pounds at some meetings. What happens after a split vote? Is the issue decided? This is an interesting issue. The kinds of things that I ponder. So there's a split vote. Does that mean that the next meeting we can bring it up? Does that mean that after the board has spoken, someone can continue to beat on that issue? SEC has said that there's no lone wolves. There's an interesting little wrinkle in Robert's rules that goes to this. If you make a motion and the motion fails after a vote, you can't bring it up again unless someone who voted in the majority makes the motion. That's to prevent a minority from continuing to grab a meeting. Interesting little wrinkle. Policy goes to this in this case. Lone board member with process concerns about a contract. Board member wanted to file a petition with a commissioner. Board attorney told the member he couldn't do so without the support of the majority. He filed anyway. And the SEC basically said you can't do that. You are opening up the door to legal exposure for yourself and the board, and once the board has spoken, the board has spoken, and that's the point, folks. That might not be permanent. Maybe that means when it goes round again and we have a newly established board, we're going to bring this issue back to committee. Or maybe this is an issue where we're going to bring it to leadership, and if there's an appropriate time, that issue gets brought back to committee and we see it get voted on again. But you have individual important voice, you have individual authority to cast a vote. But remember, once the body speaks, the body speaks. Once a vote happens and there's resolution, it has legal effect. May you ever take your hat off. I would suggest to you that you can't, folks. It doesn't mean you can't speak, but that means that you need to be mindful that you're speaking now as a member of the Board of Education and that your comments are subject to the School Ethics Act. In many ways, your ability to speak now, after being sworn into this august and important selfless position, are less than they were before you were a member of the Board of Education. Just like we talk about how the great Tinker case, the Vietnam era case, you don't check civil rights at the schoolhouse gate. Our students can still speak. The Garcetti case talks about civil rights and speech rights of public employees. Those rights are not lost, but they're checked, they're tempered by role and responsibility. Similarly here, if you speak, you have to be perfectly clear that you're speaking as a member of the Board of Education. You're not speaking on behalf of the board, you're speaking as an individual. Not speaking for the Board of Education, speaking as an individual. And you got to be really careful about those comments. And there's folks, case after case after case after case on this point. And if there's ever a question about this, and we defend ethics complaints on this issue, if there's ever a question about this, we can help you, right? And if you have ethics questions, if you have questions about conflicts and things like that, bring them to us. No personal gain. I refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups or use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. What's that mean? That means that, as we talked about, your advocates of students and of staff in interpreting the will of your community. That's why your position is nonpartisan. That's why when you run, you don't run R or D or I or G or some other identified party. You don't speak for a party, you speak individually, and you can't surrender your judgment. That's what this means. In many cases to this point. What board information is confidential? You can almost ask what board information is not confidential.
Personnel decisions are confidential.
If the public will hear at a meeting, if the public could walk into an office and say, let me see this document or that document, that's not confidential. Student information is always confidential. Disciplinary information is always confidential. Evaluative information is confidential. Even things like budgets, when it's deliberative in the sausage-making process, the painful process that the district goes through every year before a final budget's presented, is confidential. Err on the side of assuming that information is confidential. Information can't be shared. And this doesn't mean not just on social. This means, in the old days when we had packets of information sitting on counters, we don't have that anymore. Now we have computers that might be open or closed. Keep your computer closed. Can't share it, especially the good stuff. You can expose yourself, you can expose the district. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which if disclosed would needlessly injure individuals or the schools, and all other matters that will provide accurate information. And again, in concert with, I shared this with you before, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its school. Here's a recent case. Board member violated multiple provisions of the Act. When at a PTA meeting, they discussed the board's superintendent search and candidates for the position, indicated it was unlikely the acting super would be considered. Must have been a great PTA meeting to attend. And then publicly stated at a board meeting it was important that the new superintendent held everyone accountable and that it might have been difficult for the acting superintendent to do that if they'd been selected. Roll the tape forward. Think about your words. If the information is being shared in executive session, it's being shared in executive session for a reason. May a board member investigate a community concern? There's a difference, folks, between not sharing a concern and not being able to investigate it. If a concern is brought to you, you have every right in the world to share that concern and to make sure that administratively it's being chased down, and to follow up and ask, and where is it? And what's the determination? That's different than showing up and taking pictures. That's different than making your own reports. That's different than asking for business office information and crunching numbers on your own. If you have that initiative, God bless you, but don't do it. Proceed through proper channels. I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and act on the complaints only after failure of an administrative solution. So that doesn't mean that you can't. It means that we got to follow a process. Process exists for difficult circumstances. We've seen some here over the last couple of years. We got a process to follow. Let the process go where the process is going to go. If we don't follow the process and we go off into the weeds on our own, I can't defend it. And then we mess up other considerations. Board members violated the code by going to a principal directly in connection with a parent complaint. I don't want to say a rule of thumb, those are words we've lost also. All these phrases and words we've lost. A good best practice is you can speak with the superintendent, you can speak with the BA. Other than that, and that's only because the BA is your board secretary, everybody subordinate you don't have the ability to go to. And there's a concern that you've gone around this process otherwise. Keep that in mind. Board members violated is another recent case. Board members violated the code by sending a response email to a community member that was critical of a staff member's comments at a public meeting, then posting same on their private social media account, which should have been deleted, calling the post flippant, hypocritical, inflammatory, and a source of embarrassment. Members promised the community member an administrative response even though the administration was still investigating, hadn't yet responded. Administration in the schools by the administration, as we've discussed. We talked about volunteering. I will open the floor to board questions.
I have a question.
Please.
To the extent the board makes a decision and a member of the public brings legal action against a member of the board, what's our recourse in the event something like that happens?
Thank you for the question. Your legal recourse, meaning your legal exposure, meaning are you protected, meaning...
Yes, exposure,
yeah.
protection.
Thank you. So there's a concept of indemnification, which you might be familiar with, meaning that one in the course of their job is indemnified, is protected by their employer. Similarly here, the legal actions brought against the Board of Education, brought against the school district, and even if individuals are named, unless there could be some showing that you acted outside of your role, the district's insurance coverage and otherwise protects you, and a defense is provided for you. And that goes not just for board members, that goes for administrators, that goes for staff, it goes for teachers and others. The old example of the student sitting on the curb outside of school and the buses have left and the teacher comes out and says, oh, you know, you live down the street from me, go ahead, hop in the car. And then there's an accident. Maybe not indemnified because your job's not to drive Billy home. Your job is to teach Billy in that building, right? Mm-hmm. So long as you're staying within the rails, and that's an important point, so long as you're staying in these rails, these ethical rails, you're protected. Other questions?
What's the most common mistake you see board members make?
Great question. Social media is a hotbed today, and it's unfair. And I see teachers running into this issue as well. We're connected 24/7. There's an immediate news cycle. We are accustomed to being engaged. Who gets elected to the board, right? Folks that are engaged in their community, folks that have a passion, folks that have a vision. And there are at times unfair expectations when it comes to what you can communicate on and not. I see that as an issue. I also see issues when it comes to the employment process and the role of the board compared to the role of individuals, compared to we got to wait for the administration to bring issues to us. The SEC taking action on things like that as well. There are a couple of matters before the SEC right now on health curriculum and votes actually cast by board members. Members of the community challenging votes that were cast and challenging them as being inappropriate. I think, frankly, board members casting votes based on their I don't want to say beliefs, but their perspective as to what is appropriate or not in and of itself. A vote, I don't think, can be unethical. But we'll see what the SEC decides on that. What else? Please.
Question about the chain of command, kind of you emphasized a few times. Is a board member bringing a resolution to the board, by themselves within these guardrails, or that always should be done through the president?
Yeah, great question. I think that the issue goes there to what's the resolution. If this is a resolution, what's the subject matter of the resolution? If that subject matter typically is going to go through committee before it lands here, then that issue ought to go to board leadership through the committee process and then out this way. Because new business is not an opportunity to make an end run. If that resolution is not one that would typically go through a committee process, if we don't have a committee that would consider that issue, or it's bringing up an issue perhaps that has been brought to board leadership and there's been no action, or has been brought to administration and there's been no action, so that the board is aware so that it could be sent to committee, I think that's appropriate. So I think the issue turns on what the subject matter is. Because I do see, painfully, and it's often late at night, boards where you have board members that are bringing up, example, we've got, this is not here, okay, this is a different we've got a program where we're doing certain athletic programs, and there's a pay to play, and the chip in is $50 a season. A board member should not bring up a motion during new business to say, you know what, I think this 50 is too much. Let's make it 40. Can you as a board member bring up a motion? Sure. Should that go through the same process, the same committee process that led to what set that fee in the first place? That's what you have to do. What else?
Not a question, just I wish you had done this 3 years ago when I first started. You covered ethics and governance one beautifully, so thank you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here, folks. And again, I congratulate you for your great work and wish you well for a great year. I echo our president's optimism and ambition for the year. It's going to be a great year. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, John. I thought that was outstanding. Thank you. All right, we are on to our opportunity for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the school board with questions or comments. The public is requested to sign the register provided for this purpose and to state their name, municipality of residence, group affiliation if applicable, and direct their comments to the school board president. While all comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming if and when appropriate, school board members will not respond to speakers at the time of their appearance. The public comment period will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length unless there are unusual circumstances, and those appearing will be allocated 3 minutes to speak, and no one will be permitted to speak twice until those that have not yet had an opportunity to speak have had a turn. The floor is open for public comment. Seeing none. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
Motion from, motion, who had the motion?
I did.
All right, motion from Kim, second from
Jessica.
Jessica. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.